Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience. Today we have a very special guest. We have somebody who normally is the one doing the interviews, but today I'm going to turn the tables on him a little bit because we have the lead correspondent from Cageside Press, a brilliant journalist. If you've seen a UFC press conference, you've probably seen him. He is amazing. I love watching his interviews. He's also very, very knowledgeable on the sport, so I'm super excited to talk to him. So let's go ahead and bring on Gabriel Gonzalez. What's up, Gabriel? How are you?
What's up, Bree? Thank you very much for that introduction. You're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, you did a great intro for me too, so I gotta return the favor.
No, hey, all true. I only speak facts over here, so no, but it's appreciated.
Yeah, so I'm curious. So this weekend we had, and I love when this happens, because everybody starts talking. We had a very controversial title fight. We had Dricus. How do you say his name? Dricus?
I say it Dracus, like with the I as an A sound.
Okay.
I feel like here's the thing. I was at the media day where he told everybody, because like he was like back to back on Dana White's "If you don't know, now you know," and Dana butchered it, and he was like, "Guys, it's Dricus Du Plessis," and it's like, Dricus. And I think that Dana was calling him Du Plessis, and it's like, it's like, no, we got you. You know what I mean?
Dricus. Okay. All right. I got it. I'm going to try to pronounce it better this time. So we had Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. And a lot of people thought Sean won. A lot of people thought Dricus won. I thought Sean won. You thought Dricus won. It was crazy. I mean, MMA media was going nuts. And Dana White thought Sean Strickland won. But there was a lot of fighters who thought Dricus won. There was a lot of fighters that thought Sean won. What do you think about all this?
I mean, look, honestly, I thought it was a very competitive fight. My biggest takeaway, and I talked about it on MMA Daily, available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. When I broke it down, I was like, we kind of learned that Sean, it wasn't, the Adesanya thing wasn't a fluke. He is a very difficult handful for everybody in that middleweight division. Saw it against Cannonier. Saw it against, Abus and obviously Izzy. He is not a easy guy to deal with, apparently, unless your name's Alex Pereira, and you just saw that again. That was a very close fight. It was very competitive. I tweeted it if you followed me. I was like, this one, some of those are swing rounds. Some of those could be seen differently. Dracus was throwing bigger. You could argue that Sean was the more precise, probably even landed a few more, even if it didn't look like he was expending, the same amount of effort. And I know there's that argument, not all significant strikes are created equal kind of deal. But for sure, that was a very close fight. And I don't think it's unfair for Sean to feel like he did do a lot of work that might have gotten him the win.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, of course, whenever this happens, the word robbery's going to get thrown around all the time. And really, I mean, unless it's a blatant, like, if it's a very dominant performance and they lose, then, okay, yeah, that's a robbery. But in a close fight, this is not a new thing in MMA. Like, this has been happening for years, and it's probably never going to stop because, I think, too, especially when you're judging, like when I rewatched the fight, I was kind of more in favor of Sean than the first time that I watched it. Like the first time that I watched it, I was like, okay, I could see like how they would give it to Dricus, but at the same time I was like, I would have given it to Sean if it were me, but I could see it. But then when I rewatched it again and I watched it in slow motion, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I think Sean won the fight. But the judges can't watch it in slow motion. The judges, they might be seeing something different than we're seeing. And also the optics of it, when you watch Dricus, the way that he throws, it looks like he's throwing more powerful shots than Sean, even though Sean is probably landing more, like you said. So it was interesting. I actually, what I think is my biggest takeaway from it is that both of those guys are better than a lot of people thought, and in different ways. Like Sean, he didn't get knocked out like a lot of people thought he was going to. And Dricus, he lasted all 5 rounds and he didn't look tired. Actually, I thought Sean looked a little bit more tired in the 4th round than Dricus, which was surprising to me. So I was very shocked at that. I thought that Dricus did a great job of pacing himself in the fight, which I was worried about. I was like, oh, I don't know. I've seen his cardio be a problem in the past. So I think he was very well prepared for Sean. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought Sean won, but at the end of the day, these things happen. It was a close fight, but very impressed, honestly, with Dricus's cardio and impressed with Sean's ability to get out of the way and block a lot of Dricus's shots, because he was swinging pretty heavy, especially. I can't remember which round it was. He kept throwing some overhands. They weren't quite landing, but
like the second and third, and full credit to Sean. I mean, he looked like, that very used clip of Muhammad Ali when he's in that corner dodging. Dricus was throwing pretty big, and Sean very comfortably, if he was stressed, he didn't show it, really sliding and leaning perfectly in that. I was very impressed because we knew this going in, but to watch it, Dricus is very different from Israel Adesanya. And we got to see Sean execute things that he never had to go to when he was fighting Izzy. And I think that was big for him to show he could do that. And then obviously for Dricus, he was pushed to be the best version of himself that we've seen to get that title. So I think, it was a great fight. I'm completely there with you. Like I said, it was a close fight. I'm sure there are plenty of people, plenty of judges who saw it at home who were like, Sean Strickland, 40, 48, 47, whatever. That's not how it went down, Cageside, but for sure, that was a close fight, and wouldn't be surprised if they run it back down the line.
Yeah, I hope they do, honestly. I mean, I know it looks like they're trying to push the Izzy fight. So I doubt that it's going to be an immediate rematch, but hopefully, at some point we get to see that again. And hopefully by the time we do, maybe they've both evolved a little bit more and we'll see maybe a little bit of a different fight the next time. So, yeah, it's interesting. I do kind of wish they would do a rematch, right away, just because it was so close. I don't know how Izzy will do against Dricus. I'm still kind of like trying to figure that out in my head. I'm like, I don't even know how to predict that fight. It's I don't know, because Dricus looks so much different than I expected him to in this fight. So now I'm kind of like, what? I don't know.
Well, a subtle thing that a lot of people don't talk about, he looks so different fight to fight. Like Sean more or less looks like the same guy. Adesanya, guys like Frankie Edgar, guys like, some of these who are like, we're so used to, and it's like they just implement their style the same way against different people. Dricus, I mean, I feel like he just fights differently the way he fought Till. And then Whitaker, I feel like he was darting more in and out with Rob. He wasn't really looking to come forward like he was against Sean. All of those things are very relevant. And the same thing, Izzy, maybe he's got more of his style very, cemented, but once again, Dricus isn't Sean Strickland either. I feel like a guy like Izzy would see different things than he did against Sean. So it just makes for a very fun fight. But I'm with you. Styles make fights. Just because fighter A beat fighter B and B beat C doesn't mean A beats C. It makes for a lot of fun. And but I'm with you. That's the fight to make. Respectfully, as popular as he is, Israel Adesanya, Sean is not. There's just way more enticing fights for the UFC to make besides an immediate rematch in this scenario.
Makes sense. Yeah. I think Sean has definitely won the people. I mean, they call him the people's champ. So I love that, and I think that he should definitely run with that and continue to just kind of be himself. And
people who don't watch MMA and know this is my job will tell me like, oh, I love that Sean Strickland. I just, they're just into it, and it's like, these are completely nice, great people, and it's like, I know Sean says some stuff out there, and it's like, no, I just love it, and I'm like, some part of it, when Sean says some of this stuff, you almost want to say, really? But
Yeah.
no, I completely get it. I think he is, maybe this is the wrong comparison, but like Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis will
Mm-hmm.
just say what's on his mind, and people love
Yeah.
it. Is it the most politically correct? Nah, but I think people like that for that exact reason sometimes. And so yeah,
Yeah.
Sean, I think Sean has learned, and if you ask him, he would probably tell you, lean into it. The people love it more than they hate it, if we're being honest. So
I agree.
now
Yeah. It.
here's the thing: not everybody. Let me be clear, but there's
Yeah.
there's certainly a large group of people who are like, he's saying what's on his mind, and he's not polished like other people. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you see it, I see it. The fan who have you seen the video of how far he went to get that handshake at the press conference?
The guy
So
that
this
rushed the
kid,
stage.
yeah, he was like in
I
the
saw
upper
that.
mezzanine and like went over like one of the, not a barricade, but essentially he had to make a little bit of a jump and a drop from like low key second
Oh
story to
wow.
first story to reach Sean. This is people just, there's a large group of people who just love what he's doing. I don't think he should
Yeah.
be saying some of the things he does sometimes, but to each their
Yeah.
own, as they say. Go for it.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that Dana, doesn't censor anybody, and because it's kind of like it's on you. Whatever you say that doesn't necessarily represent Dana and what he thinks. It represents you at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So I do like that. And I think that Sean is very relatable. And I was talking about this with my coach one day, and he's like, I think there's a lot more Sean Stricklands out in the world than we think. Like,
I
I
think
think
that's
there's a
fair.
lot of Sean Stricklands out there.
I think that's
And
very fair.
yeah, and especially like, I'm from Missouri. Like, there's definitely a lot of Sean Stricklands out here. Like, it's it's definitely a very relatable character. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But I am curious to see what's next for both of them. I mean, there's the Izzy fight, obviously. People talk about Hamzat. I don't really think Hamzat deserves a title shot necessarily. I do like that matchup though. And then there's of course Pajeda. Everybody kind of was joking about him looking over the cage with his revenge run, and I do think that is an interesting matchup. I do wonder. I was kind of wondering. I'm like, is Pajeda ever gonna go back to 185? I'm like, he's so big. I'm like, I don't think so. I highly
I
doubt
think
it.
the 85 thing was a strictly in pursuit of Adesanya thing, if I'm
Yeah.
being quite honest. And mind you, let's be real, it was a great strategy. If he had come in at 205 immediately, he would not be a UFC champ within 10 fights.
No.
Certainly not a two division champ. So
No.
it worked out. It made the sacrifice paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting. I am wondering what is going to be next for him too at light heavyweight, especially with Ankalaev coming off a big win. I really want to see that fight. Honestly, I think that would probably be the toughest matchup at 205 for Pajeda. Jamal Hill, that's the fight to make if Jamal is going to be back soon enough, I guess. I haven't really heard any updates on his injury, but I would think that would probably be the next logical fight that they would
I
make at
think that's the fight
205.
they. I think that's the fight they want. I think it's about schedule. If the
Yeah.
UFC needs Pereira sooner, they'll and Hill isn't ready, they're just gonna go Ankalaev and
Yeah.
just Hill when you're ready. But we need Pereira right now. And
Yeah.
then obviously if they can afford to wait, if the schedule plays out, then you can hold off a little bit for Hill and Alex. But right now it's just the schedule. I don't know that they necessarily are feeling the onus to put Pajeda before May. So I don't think that, Hill just, like, it's late January. Right now, Hill, you just keep doing your rehab, and we'll see where we are probably this time next month about when we need Pajeda.
Yeah. That makes sense. Give me 1 second. My dog has got a hold of a shoe. I'll be right back.
It's all good.
A few moments later.
Were you at UFC 297, or did you watch that one from home?
I was not. I was at home. Our coworker Jay, who's up there at Cageside Press, he was there for us, so he was representing. So all the clips
Nice.
that week are him and our editor in chief and our boss Eddie Law.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I've seen Eddie. I think he's I think I follow him on Instagram. I'm not familiar with the other guy. But
Jay tends to be more behind the scenes.
Okay.
He's a guy schedule wise and all that. He'll sometimes do a lot of Zoom interviews. He's not as much of an
Nice.
event guy. That tends to be my thing. But yeah, over the last year we've definitely been expanding and all that. So yeah, Jay gets out every now and then, and he does his thing. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And he's our
Yeah.
rep for Canada, so obviously all that Vancouver, Toronto, that's just more or less his jurisdiction, which is completely fine.
Yeah. So do
I'll
you
get to
guys
Canada
have
eventually.
Do you guys have reporters like in different countries? Like whenever they have different events?
Not necessarily like worldwide. We do like to try to vet our people, obviously.
Sure.
It's a big deal to have UFC credentials, and more, especially in today's landscape, the difference between someone just starting out a pro website and a fan with a Twitter is getting a lot harder to distinguish. And quite bluntly, we want people who represent us very well, represent us at events very well, because it is a big deal. We're not the biggest website, and having that access is huge. So we don't,
Yeah.
if we can't check you personally with stuff, we don't pick up people like that. But we do have Jay in Canada. We have Jamie Theo in England, who does well for us in Europe. We have a couple people on the East Coast. Obviously, I run a lot of West Coast stuff, and I do travel a lot too. Not as much in 23, but always hoping that'll be changing in the coming months. So yeah, we do have people all around, and yeah, that's just our biggest thing when it comes to events. That's it. We have more people who contribute to different degrees on the site in terms of articles and stuff like that everywhere. So it just works like that.
Nice. And how long has Cageside Press been around?
Oh man, I always forget because the thing with Cageside is most of us were at another website, and
Oh, okay.
then
I
we
gotcha.
essentially we kind of departed that one and started our own thing. So it kind of feels like
Yeah.
Cageside has lasted a lot longer than it, quote, actually has as a website. I want to
Sure.
say it might have been 17. I want to say 2017 is around that. I think
Okay.
yeah, the 16 we might have all been at the other one, 15, 16. I might be off
Nice.
by about a year, but yeah, essentially that's how long we've been. And Jay and Eddie, I've been with those guys more or less day one. I don't know that I could tell
Mhm.
you the first time I ever actually like messaged or said hi to Jay and Eddie, but they've kind of been at the top for a long time. We've had more people come in. Some people have been here for a second and gone on to do different stuff, which is cool and fine. But yeah, since about 17, the band's been together. You know what I mean?
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I was curious about that because I really do like your guys's your page and your YouTube channel and your Instagram. I've noticed you guys have been posting more clips, which I love, and it's awesome because I feel like you guys really do a great job of speed, like covering things very quickly and updating like who won the fights and all that kind of stuff too, which is really nice. So it's great, and I feel like we need good, unbiased MMA media. And there's, like you said, there's so much now. Like it seems like, you know, MMA media is in an interesting time because there's people, like me, where I don't have a journalism background. I'm not really a journalist per se, but I've done interviews, and I cover the fights. I would consider myself probably more of an analyst than a journalist, I guess, because what I love to do is like watch the fights and kind of break it down and like talk about technique and stuff like that and stats. But, and then there's like, your YouTubers, you got your MMA guru, you got your Jesse on Fire, and they're kind of like doing similar to what I'm doing. And then you've got, Cageside Press, you got Ariel Hawani, you got all these MMA media outlets. And then, like you said, there's all these Twitter pages, which I don't really get on Twitter, so I don't really pay attention, but there's a lot. And so it's hard to tell sometimes, like, what is going on in MMA, and there's a lot of speculation a lot of times. So
the word media, the word media has, in all honesty, I think the biggest problem is that a lot of people like to use the word, and not everyone is always referring to it the same way, and nobody cares to actually distinguish the difference. When certain groups are grumbling about the media, let's be real, you are not talking about the media the way I am from someone else, or they are from this person. And I think that's the issue. And I don't think that, one, it's so niche that people don't actually care. It's only about, it feels like 200 people in the world, and the world of, I mean, how many trillion, right? Billions and all that. Actually care about the difference between, quote, real media and other media. I mean, I asked the people on the street, hey man, what do you think about the difference between MMA media and MMA? They'd be like, WTF are you wasting my time with? Like, I could give two whats about it. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Is that really a thing? Like, no one cares, but I get it because we are part of it and we are impacted, and sometimes shots feel like they are taken at me, at them, at her, at him. It can feel a little bit personal, but it's like, ladies and gentlemen, they don't really care. It's not actually a big deal. It's only a big deal to us in our little circle. Honestly, it's such a microcosm that the media thing, like I said, because it's our business, because it's my business, obviously I know about it, but it's like sometimes you have to take not just one but two steps back and realize people don't actually care. It's only you because it's your job,
100%. Yeah. It's funny because, like, a lot of people have, like, thrown that, I guess, label on me of being MMA media, and, like, it kind of just started happening. And I know, and it's so weird because, like, I don't feel like it.
Can I ask, all right, let me ask you a little bit. What do you feel you need to be considered, or consider yourself MMA media? However you define that term now.
I don't know. I guess that's a good question. I think I just maybe have imposter syndrome a little bit, and I'm like, I'm not a journalist. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I didn't go to college. I'm like, I don't know.
So,
but I do a lot of interviews, and I do talk a lot about MMA. So I guess this is the new era of MMA media.
So one thing I would say, I think you are imposter syndroming yourself a bit, because I think not only are you legit MMA media, your quality of work that you're putting out there, I would put above many people I do see that maybe they might be a little more open to saying, I am the media. I see someone who puts a lot of quality and effort into their work. I love your clips. I love everything you're doing back there with your BRE and everything, Muhammad Ali. The presentation, you care about it. The professionalism, the standard you're clearly holding yourself to, you care about it. Enthusiasm, I think I feel it. I think your listeners feel it. So yeah, all of the qualifications of what you would call MMA media, you already have it. Look, there's obviously different levels of commitment and time and effort and success to everybody. For myself, I'll say right now, was I part of the media for a while before people cared? Absolutely. People probably didn't care and still don't care that I was doing all these Combate Americas, local LFAs. No one cared before I was at a UFC and you saw me. Nobody. That's fine. I get it, but it's like, so when it's like, oh, did you just start media at your first UFC event? Obviously not. But I get it, the perception. And so whatever you have going on, let me just kind of reiterate, and I'm sure anyone who watches you will say it. She is media. Now, look, you are not a, let's say maybe more of a comedian. Don't get me wrong, you're perfectly charming and have a sense of humor. But it's like you are here to analyze and you talk fights and what's next and what you saw in the technique and all that, and you have an enthusiasm for it. And that's a completely, legit lane that you call MMA media. And I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My imposter syndrome is definitely not as bad now that you've said that.
No, you are legit. Like, if you want to throw the term, absolutely, you've earned it. 100%.
I think it's because, like, when I started, I had to learn everything at once. And so I think that's why my imposter syndrome is so bad, because, like, I had to learn editing and recording, filming, how to use the camera, how to talk in front of the camera, like, I had to learn how to interview. Like, I taught myself everything. So I think that's why I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. When you teach yourself things, you don't develop as much confidence with it as when somebody else teaches you how to do it, because you don't have that validation that, like, oh, yeah, you're doing this right. You're doing this right. You're kind of just like, I hope I'm doing this right.
Well, let me ask you a question.
So,
do you consider me media?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because I had to do the same thing you did. I did not get a broadcast or a journalism degree. I got a degree in creative writing. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff, and you can ask certain people who fought in UFC who remember it. I mean, I did interviews, no camera, realizing I did need a camera, realizing I did need a camera with external microphone. Had to conduct myself here. Had to do a lot of the little things. I took classes in Hollywood for, presentation on camera, just so I could get a little more of a feel for terminology and habits to have that some of these people who did have backgrounds maybe in broadcasting kind of were introduced to. So I had to do a lot of that on my own. I didn't get it through the typical college route or from a, local station and work my way up like some people, on the beat of news reporting do. So yeah, just because you had to teach yourself, there's a lot of us who have. There's a lot of people who have not been on camera yet who are doing media work now. So definitely the route you take to acquire the skills isn't as, don't let it be as prevalent as you may think, is what I'm trying to get at.
That's fair. So were you into journalism first, or were you into MMA first?
Oh, definitely MMA.
That's what I thought.
And what's funny is that I could distinctly remember my high school English teacher wrote, and it's probably in here in my office somewhere, I still have the yearbooks, but he wrote in my yearbook, you know what, it's a shame we didn't really have like a legit school paper, you would have been awesome at it. And then of course years later it's like, obviously not on paper, it's mostly a digital space, but you get my point. And it's like, well, I guess he was onto something. I just didn't know it either. But yeah, definitely. Wow. I was just an MMA fan. I'd been practicing martial arts and I was introduced to it through a friend. When you do a lot of the classes and stuff like that, they tend to pair you off with someone close to your size. There's a guy about my age named Mike, really liked UFC, really big Chuck Liddell fan at the time. This is about 2007. Chuck was fighting Rampage in UFC, said, Gabriel, you really got to check it out, it's really awesome, and he was hyped for it. Enough to the point that I was like, well, let me see what it's about. Saw it, thought it was awesome, been watching since, and, fast forward 15 years later, 16, here we are.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of have a similar situation. Like, I had friends that were into MMA, and I thought it was kind of crazy when I first saw it. Like, because we would go to the bar or whatever, we'd go hang out at somebody's house, and there'd be fights on, and I was
You're talking about like 6 months ago? Because I know you're very young, is it? So you just turned 21.
I'm 28. I'm 28.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that. Why did I feel like you were 23? I could have sworn you were
Everybody
a lot younger.
thinks I'm like a baby. I know, it's funny.
I mean,
yeah, because I started watching MMA when I was like probably like 20 or 21.
Okay.
I think like that was when I was first exposed to it, really. I mean, I was exposed to it probably way before that because my dad, I remember, would always be watching it. He'd be like, oh, I'm going to watch Ultimate Fighting. He'd go to his room and he would just watch UFC for hours.
His little man cave retreat.
Yeah, my dad's a big MMA fan. So I was exposed to it a little bit, and I knew what it was. And my cousin's a big MMA fan too. Actually, a lot of people in my family like MMA. But it wasn't until I was older, and then my friends, because, you know, I'm not going to like anything my parents like. So when my friends were into it, then I was like, oh, okay, I'll give this a shot. And then it was, I think I told you the story. It was whenever I saw Rose win the belt, and I can't even remember which fight it was, but I was probably 21 or 22 at the time, I think.
Yeah,
I believe.
that
Gosh, it's
tracks,
been longer than I thought.
It's like 16 when she beat Joanna, right? I feel like
I think so.
Because I feel like that was the MSG
yeah.
year. That was the MSG year. I remember that was around that time.
Yeah. And that was when I was like, oh, this is different. I was like, this, because at that point, I was like, oh, I want to, like, do this. Like, I wasn't even just like, oh, I love to watch this. I was like, I want to do that. I'm like, I want to fight. And who knows, maybe one day I will. But I got a long way to go with my training if I do.
I was going to say, here's my thing, and I know this is unfair. It's like, you're just so, like, nice. You just got, okay, you probably get this a lot. You just have so much little sister energy. Like, just you're just so, like, bright and enthusiastic, and it's like, you just want to, like, I talk to you, and I'm like, I want to make sure nobody's bullying you. Like, if you haven't eaten, I feel like I need to, like, buy you a hamburger and some pizza. Like, make sure you're fed. You just have little sister energy that it's, like, it's hard for me to see you, like, you know, with your, like, braids and cornrows. Like, yeah, let's do it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I feel like I do have, like, my, I don't know what you call it. I have, like, my nice persona, and then I have, like, my dark persona.
Mean persona.
Yeah, because it's like, well, with people that are nice to me and people that are cool to me, like, obviously I'm, like, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Like, I'm super friendly, and, like, I'm just a chill person. Like, I'm very easy to get along with. But if somebody's, like, rude and disrespectful to me, like, I will put people in their place. Like, I am not afraid to stand up for myself. And so, like, I have, like, two sides of my personality a little bit. And when I'm in the gym, I feel like that kind of helps me balance it. And when I'm, like, kind of feeling a little, like, angry, I feel like going to the gym really helps me get that out. So it's funny. And I started training a few years ago at an MMA gym. And I had done, like, some boxing, like, cardio kickboxing before. But it was, like, I didn't even remember anything I learned. I didn't learn any technique. It was just like, here, hit the bag, 4 times, and then do this, and then do push-ups. Like, it wasn't really, there was no technique taught in that, and that's why I went to train at an MMA gym, and because I wanted to learn the technique, because I was like, I want to fight one day, and I didn't tell anybody that's why I was doing it. I just went, and I was like, let me see if I can even do this. Let me see if I can even throw punches properly. And let me see if I can learn this technique. And then I started sparring, and then I was like, this is fun. And and it kind of, I don't know, it was different than I expected. Like, there were definitely some sparring sessions where, like, yeah, we were going a little too hard for sure. But when you're doing, like, when you're sparring with somebody that, you know them and you trust them, it's really fun. Like, and you really do learn a lot more through sparring than you do from just hitting a bag, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
And not only that, but then what I noticed was it really helped me level up my knowledge too. And I don't think you have to train to be a good analyst. I don't think you have to compete to be a good analyst or to be a media person, but I do think it helps a lot. And it really helped me understand kind of putting myself more in the fighter's shoes of, like, oh, it's not as simple as just get up, or it's not as simple as just punch him in the face. Like, it's not that simple. There's way more to it than just that. And so it really helped me understand more of that. And I haven't really done much grappling, but I've done a lot of striking and mostly boxing. And that has really, really helped me, especially with watching the Sean Strickland fight, like really made me appreciate his style a lot more. Because I see the technique and I'm like, wow, you know, I can appreciate that. But long story short, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And then took a break from training because I had other stuff going on in my life that became a priority, which I actually regret. I wish I would have stayed in it. So it took like a year off, and now I'm back at it. I've been back at it for like 4 or 5 months now. So I'm feeling feeling a lot better.
Sometimes things happen, right?
Yeah.
So your dad being a big fan and your friends and family, how do they feel about your, you know, becoming an MMA media member and doing your thing now?
They like it. At first, I think they were just kind of like, what are you doing? You know, because I started off, I was doing like fitness content and I was doing like my podcast, obviously, but I was talking about MMA. I was talking about all kinds of different stuff. Because I have a personal training certification too, like, and that was actually something I wanted to do, was personal training. And then I kind of, when I started doing the podcast, I was like, oh, I want to talk about MMA. And funny enough, I was talking to, I don't know if you know Sam Tripoli. He's a comedian. And he has like 12 podcasts. And I was talking to him, and he was like, have you ever seen Jesse on Fire? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you could do that. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, you should totally do that. And so that's kind of how it started. And then, you know, I started my MMA podcast, and I kind of separated that from my interviews. And now I kind of have like, you know, obviously we're on this podcast right now, which this is kind of just more of like a conversation, which is kind of how I like it. I like it to be more of a conversation than an interview. But yeah, so that's kind of how it evolved and became Bree Talks MMA. So, and that
really
actually
cool.
started in the summertime, so it hasn't even been a year yet that I've been doing the MMA show.
Here's the thing, then a lot of your practice, because one things I really love about watching your stuff is your ease with graphics and the way how fast you get them out there too. I'll be honest, I'm not always the biggest fan of like don't get me wrong, I know people like them, but like when I was doing it, I was like, well, just post the clips, and you know, it's about the actual thing you're doing, not the way it's always presented, right? But in today's day and age with the TikTok and YouTube Shorts and IG Reels of it all, like your clips and just it's simple, but it's so everything's just so clean, and you do your music and all that, and I'm like, she's just, and that's why I said, you know, I praise you as media, because like you have that part down, and I think a lot of people who are good at this part of it, the talking and the podcasting, don't have the second part. So the fact that you are so clean with both already, I really think is one of your biggest strengths personally.
Thank you. Yeah, it took me a while to figure out the editing. That was
it's
work in
clearly
progress.
Worked out. You clearly got there, because like I love when I see your clips and I'm like, sweet, short, digestible, works. Obviously, you've done stuff with like you and I, and I'm like, oh my god, we actually sound like so knowledgeable and like it's legit. I think people just think I show up with the haircut and I just talk or something. You make it, you frame it completely differently, and I respect that a lot. I'm still getting there. I try to make this as easy as possible, because I don't want to put something worse out there, you know, because I'm experimenting. I like to be really comfortable before I, you know, put the baby out into the universe.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, too, like how I make my clips and stuff. And I'm like, I can't explain it to you. You just have to do it 100 million times, and then you'll figure it out. I'm like,
all
editing is an art form. Yeah, it's an art form. It's like, it's so much more than just taking a clip and adding pictures on it and adding, like, no, I'm like, there's transitions, there's sound effects, there's, you know, all kinds of stuff that you have to do. And I probably spend too much time on mine, to be honest, but I love it. And I'm developing skills. So to me, I view it more as like it's like I'm going to college, but I'm going to college by myself. And I'm going to college to be an editor. And I'm Just
that's
picking up
completely
new
what
skills.
it is anymore. If you didn't
Yeah.
pick these up in school or something, you now are responsible for doing it and your day job, you know? So
Yeah, exactly.
it really is. Like I said, you clearly have it. It's clearly worked.
Thank you.
And yeah, like it is a whole it's a whole beast. And but what I would say, I do think it makes the difference because quite bluntly, you know, in today's world of, like we said, everybody can make content. If you have a iPhone and good Wi-Fi, you can take a clip and within 2 minutes it's out on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. So to be in this space, especially in today's iteration of it, it's hard. And so the fact
Yeah.
that you have that ability to really present your content quickly the way you do your clips, I think it's big because not everyone has that. Obviously, you've seen it. I've seen plenty of media members, you know, maybe they should invest a little bit more time in it, and myself included. I feel like I do okay, but you know, I know there's another level to it that I have to get to, you know?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And honestly, the biggest game changer for me was when I started working with Hector a little bit. He kind of gave me some ideas, and that you probably noticed a shift with my content around that time. And you notice like kind of it got a little bit better. And it was because he kind of gave me some ideas, and he didn't really know how to edit or anything, but he was just like, oh, you should do it like this, you should add, you know, some more pictures and videos in there, make it more visual. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And it's
That's all you
just
need
funny
sometimes.
yeah, I mean, and honestly, I think that's the biggest thing too, and why I'm glad, you know, to have people like you in my corner and networking with other MMA media people, because we can help each other, we can share ideas. And obviously you don't want to give everybody all your secrets, but you know, you want to help people that are trying to, you know, level up their content, because not everybody's a competitor. Like, I don't view you as a competitor. Like, you're somebody that I want to collaborate with, because you know more than me in a lot of areas, and you know, there's probably some areas that I can help you. So it's like, you know, when you view things from that perspective, I think it works a lot better, and you can still be on your own and still collaborate with people. Like, you know, I work best alone, and I figured that out over the years, that like I'm a one-man show. Like I that's just how I've always been. I work really well alone. When I start getting too many people involved, that's when things start to get okay.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, so I do envision myself at some point like having my own team. I think that would be really cool in the future. Probably not anywhere in the near future, but like down the road. But I do work best alone. But I do love to collaborate with people too, and I like to showcase other people what they're doing, because in my opinion, it's like, I'm not going to go out and do all these interviews like you're doing, so I might as well share yours and show people like, hey, if you want to see great interviews that are at these UFC pay-per-view events, go check out Gabriel's page, go check out Cageside Press, because they're killing it. So it's like, I'd rather share yours than me try to do everything and be like, hey, look, I'm doing all this stuff. It's like, I would love to do some UFC interviews, and I probably will, you know, at some point, but I don't need to do all of them. I'd probably lose my mind. But I've always envisioned myself kind of having more of like a Joe Rogan role in MMA media, of like doing some commentary, doing some interviews, and then having like my own thing most of the time. That's kind of like my dream.
No, that's awesome. Honestly, I think it's a lot of maturity to say I kind of like that kind of path.
Yeah.
First off, yes, I've had you on my show. You know, I love talking to you. I think we have a, you know, just good synergy when we're chatting about stuff. I think we've got a good energy, and that comes through on our when we've collabed and done stuff.
For sure.
But yeah, in terms of that one, I would just say, and I realize I'm probably talking too much on your show and let you ask me questions, but honestly, one, just start. And I think it's very mature to say I don't want to do everything and don't like to, because my biggest advice to media when they ask me and they're coming up, find the most efficient way to do the part of the job you like the most. If you like interviewing, put yourself in positions where you could do a lot of interviews and it works with your routine. if you start saying, you know what, I'm going to do like 50 articles and 3 podcasts and 20 interviews and I'm going to go balls to the wall Monday through Friday, if you're not seeing returns immediately, oh my God, like that is a quick way to go from loving it to wanting to just go back to being a fan. And if you want to be in this space, I think it's about, managing a lot of that. And if you're doing your thing, the opportunities will come so easily because it's so easy to do everything. But yeah, I think the fact that you're like, I like my thing. I know what's not my thing and I'm okay with that. Like for example, I don't know that I would ever want to be an analyst myself personally. I think, like I listened to John Anik, amazing. I think his delivery, all that. Wish I could tell you that like I would want that, but it's like, no, I very much like Megan O'Leary, Laura Sanko's role and personality in interviewing. That's more what my dream goal and like position in this space is to be in a spot like that. I don't know that like if they told me you'd be great, you know what? I'm not probably the guy to sit there and talk to you and wax poetically about the jiu-jitsu we're seeing in this moment, I can appreciate it. I could certainly I want to be knowledgeable enough to break it down and ask you what I saw and to explain it. But and I think it's awesome. Clearly, 2 different spots in the space. I definitely, like when I say like, no, like someone long form talking about it, not only like, look, on my show, I think we might have done almost 20 minutes just on the whole Dricus Sean thing. Yeah. You can do this for like every fight on the card. I don't know that I have that patience all the time, and no disrespect to any of the fighters, obviously, but it's like I know the kind of show I'm geared toward doing and how I like to present it, and so the fact that you have that depth, have that readiness from the bottom of the card, I think it's great.
Thank you.
This is the Hype Up Breach episode I figured out.
That's hilarious. I appreciate it though, man. Because I work so hard and there's so little like reward from it in the beginning, and I know that it takes time. Yeah, so I'm not that concerned about it, but it's like in the beginning you're just like, man, this better pay off one day.
Oh, trust me. I know people who still feel that way now. It's salary jobs. Trust me. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Well, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you, what's the next event are you going to cover in person, live on the scene? Are you going to 298
in Anaheim? Yeah,
nice.
Coming up in about 3 weeks. So
well, that's
excited
right in your backyard,
for that.
Huh?
Yes. So what's this, about maybe under 2-hour drive. So right up my alley. We had heard LA, and it's like. That one I could have done. I would have only had to do like one hotel night, and it was like, oh, this is so convenient. This is awesome. Anaheim, it's like I can, but it's like I gotta. Essentially, every meal would have to be in my car, and it's like at a certain point, well, how much suffering do you really want to do, And it's like, so it's like, nah, just book the hotel. I'll probably be back at my house by like 9 a.m. on Saturday. It's great. So, yeah.
Nice.
Or sorry, Sunday after the fights. But yeah, and then
that's awesome.
I'll be our person on deck for 300. So obviously that's a very, obviously like anybody else, I'm just ready to get it going with that too. Whatever they bring to us, so I'm ready.
Yeah, I can't wait for 300. And I was gonna ask you about that too, because looking at the fights they've announced so far, I'm pretty excited. I've seen a lot of people are not excited about it. I don't know what they're expecting. I've heard Brock Lesnar. I'm like, what? So I don't know what people want for this card. Obviously they haven't announced a main event yet. And they probably won't, I wouldn't think, for a little while, because it's still, it's April, we're not there yet. I
feel like this is the last domino to drop, right? Everything else goes from there. I think that the UFC, I think their hope was that if they keep announcing fights leading up to the main event, you're going to be like, oh my God, what's the main event going to be? We're so excited. I think it's ironically had the opposite effect. I think that everyone is like, you keep laying out all these plates, but if the Thanksgiving turkey doesn't look the most appetizing, I'm just not as into it. And I don't know why, because when I look at those fights objectively, what do we have? About 7 or 8 fights right now? I'm sorry, is
I
that a
think
bad
so.
card? Is that 8 bad fights? No, that's 8 amazing fights.
Great
I
fights.
mean, you're telling me
There's
you're
not a
gonna
bad
have
fight on that card.
you're telling me you're gonna have Wei Lee, Gaethje, Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Sarukian, all for the same price of admission for your pay-per-view at
Right.
home? And you're
Yeah.
complaining? I mean, how often do we get superstars
Bo
like
Nickel
that? I
on the
mean,
prelims.
Bo Nickel, Rakic, Jiri. That's not. I'm sorry. Is that a bad fight all of a sudden? No, it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's just people want the turkey, and then it's like you're so focused on the turkey, and then when your eyes go back, and it's like, look at everything else. Whereas instead, we're like, oh, the ham, here's some gravy. Where's the turkey? We're waiting for the turkey. I think that's what fans are happening, but objectively, those are all great fights. And I get it.
Yes.
$299 is the bar is set so high.
Yeah.
No, man, just let them, let them cook. I think, look, I mean, if I had to rank them, I think that they want to see, is he suffering any kind of fracture from the orbital, and that led to the swelling? Or, perfect scenario, you're probably going to throw a bag of cash at him. He's a champ now. He gets pay-per-view points. He may negotiate a brand new deal, one as champion,
Yep.
two, to fight Israel Adesanya at 300. That could be more than enough for him to say, I'm only 80%, but they're throwing so much money for 300. Let's just roll. He
Yep.
wasn't in that position when he was fighting Adesanya the first time. He is now. Or when he would have, September and all that.
Sure. Yeah.
If not, Dana White said it. We haven't confirmed Conor McGregor for June. It's January 23rd as we record this. They could easily call Conor tomorrow and say 300 April. And him and his, obviously that Irish accent we all know. Let's go,
Yeah.
Nathan, Michael, let's go, it could be that simple. Or, this is a great card. If you add one more champ in Leon Edwards against Bilal Muhammad, if they champ it, Leon and Islam, that's not a bad card. You look at the collection of names, it won't be bad. But I get it. You want that superstar Adesanya, superstar Conor McGregor at the top of this. I get it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think honestly they could do middleweight title fight. I think they could do Conor. I think they could do Pereira, Islam. I mean, there's so many options still that are on the table, and it's all going to come down to obviously negotiations. It's going to come down to the timing. Ramadan, that plays a huge factor as well. So there's a lot of factors at play here. But I do expect them to come out of left field with something. Maybe not the main event, or maybe will be the main event. But I do expect them to come out of left field with something that's just going to surprise everybody. I mean, I was surprised with the Gaethje Holloway fight. That was like, I totally wasn't expecting that. I was expecting Gaethje to fight Islam. And
Same.
yeah. But I like this better. I really do. Because I don't think there's any way that Gaethje is going to beat Islam, in my opinion. As much as I love Gaethje. As much as
that's
I
not
love
a hot
Gaethje.
tag. Look, Islam's on a roll. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fair.
I don't see anybody
It's going to
really.
take a big effort to be the best Islam. Let's be real.
Yeah, I think, like I've said, I think Sarukian and Gamrot probably had the best chance of anybody stylistically to beat Islam. But still, even then, I think the odds are in Islam's favor until he moves up to 170, which that's really what I want to see. I want to see how he does at 170 because to me, he's been so dominant at lightweight that I'm like, at this point, it's kind of like, when John Jones was at light heavyweight, you're like, okay, can we see something, can we see something? I need something, I need to see a fight where I think the other person is going to win. And that's not happening for me right now. So it's
some
like,
of his
okay.
victories just haven't aged the best. Sarukian aged like wine. That just looks so much
Yes.
better the more you watch it now.
Yes.
I think that my thing about Islam, And with respect to him, I felt a similar way about Cormier. When you look at Cormier's run before he fought John Jones, I mean, it seemed like he caught like 4 or 5 guys in a row who were on like the bottom of their pendulum swing at that moment. You know, Frank Mir was losing, and he was in a big skid when Cormier got him. Some other people, Dan Henderson, all this other stuff, and it's like, you know, like, and they were hyping it up, DC, and it's like, okay, is this the biggest thing? Loses to John Jones, and I was like, I mean, he never fought the number 2, number 3, number 1 contender to get to the title shot. And then post-title, oh my god, he completely turned my opinion around, just the way he handled it. Obviously, both fights were Rumble. Even though he took the L, the way he was fighting John Jones, Gustafsson, obviously moving up fighting Stipe, and I was like, you know what? I think he was just, because he was older, maybe I felt like, wait, what are we doing? No, they were just building him up a certain way to build up a fight. And I think that's the same thing with Islam. I don't know that outside of Sarukian, people would hype up a lot of those victories he had leading up to it. But then when you back-to-back, Charles Oliveira, 10-fight-ish win streak, Alexander freaking Volkanovski, Volkanovski the second time on short notice, for Islam. But it's like, if he fights a Dariush, if he fights some of these guys, completely, he was just being built up. But he was always at that level. He needs to show me that. Now, could he move up to 170? Sure, but I feel like the last piece in this moment he needs to capture on the lightweight board is still Justin Gaethje. I think you do that. I won't care that he didn't fight Poirier. I won't care that he didn't fight Dariush. I won't care that he didn't fight Connor or Chandler. I'll be like, no, look where they are. Look where he was. Gaethje's on the roll right now. Gaethje's still that guy right now. You do that, I don't think you have anything more to ever prove at lightweight. Now, do your thing at 170. You're a big 55er. Let's go.
Yeah, because if you think about it, a lot of the guys that he's fought are either grapplers or just well-rounded. Yep. Not a ton of strikers. And when even though he is obviously a very talented grappler, I've always favored Islam's stand-up. That to me has been the biggest differentiator between him and Khabib was Islam had the better stand-up. I thought Khabib had the better grappling. So, and I thought that Khabib had like the better pressure too on top.
Yeah. The pace.
And God, he was a machine. Yeah. I miss Khabib so much. But I really do think that Islam's stand-up is underrated. And I think that honestly gets overshadowed sometimes. I think that it's the same effect with Ankalaev. Is like, I've never really thought of Ankalaev much as a grappler. Like, obviously he is, but I've always like really known him more for his stand-up. And it's just because they have that name that everybody kind of associates them with being a grappler, but it's like, no, like their striking is next level. And I think that we're seeing Islam's game evolve quite a bit to the point where he can hang with a great striker on the feet. And I would be curious to see the Gaethje fight because I'm like, well, is he going to grapple or is he going to try to stand with Gaethje? And what will happen if he tries to stand with Gaethje? Is he going to be able to pull off a head kick type thing like he did with Volkanovski? I don't know. Is Gaethje going to be able to pull that off? So there's definitely, it's more interesting to me than any other fight. Besides the Sarukian fight, to me, that still is the most interesting fight at lightweight. Islam versus Sarukian, the rematch. But I am curious what his game plan will be, A, and B, how he will do in the stand-up against such a great striker, probably one of the best strikers in the division, Justin Gaethje, who's also evolved quite a bit as well, which I didn't expect, honestly.
I also think people forget about Gaethje's wrestling background and, that first fight with, that only fight with Khabib, that wasn't the worst fight for Gaethje. It's just, eventually, like everyone else, no shame in it, kind of got stuck, got caught, and that was all she wrote. But the way that Islam is different from Khabib, like you brought up, I mean, he's so built and physically imposing, but Gaethje, to his credit, bigger lightweight. He's put more muscle on his frame, he said. And he's just naturally a more nimble, technical guy. I know people just think, come forward, cause the car crash. No, he's just picking his angles, picking his spots, still could chop you up with kicks, still so heavy-handed. All these things, that makes it very different for a guy who might be more technical, but maybe a little more lumbering than Khabib was in Islam. And that could lead to stuff. And then the takedown defense. But once again, Islam, his ability to execute out there, he's proven everything he needs to with that. It's just about put it all together again. If he starts mixing up the takedowns, it makes for a more fun fight. So, once again, this is me knowing fully well we got to see the Max Holloway fight, but I just still want to see Islam and Gaethje.
Yeah, definitely. And I am leaning toward Gaethje in the Holloway fight. I do think people are sleeping on Holloway a little bit. I think it's going to be more of a competitive fight than people think, because Holloway, he cuts quite a bit of weight to make 145, so I've wanted to see him move up anyways. And remember, he was supposed to fight Khabib at one point. Like, he's not a small guy, and so him moving up to 155, I think, makes a lot of sense. I mean, what else is he going to do at featherweight? You know, fight Volkanovski for the 100th time, and, you know, the result of that is probably going to be, you know, 9 out of 10 times they fight, Volkanovski's probably going to win. And it's going to be a close fight, you know.
So my thing about it, I think that Ilya's the last piece at 45 for Volk. I think this is like, this could go down as, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ilya. I think he's got all those qualities. He's, you know, he's young, he's fast, he's versatile, he's exciting. He's got that look, he dresses cool, has the amazing beard and all of this. He's very much like multilingual. It's like, I get it. UFC probably promoting this guy to be a star.
Yeah.
Volk getting him is kind of like Mayweather fighting Canelo. Ilya will probably, win or lose, will go on to probably some more big wins. Volk getting him at this point and then saying, you know what, I've done everything I need to. Let's go to 55. Give me Dariush. Give me, you know, these guys. Let me build it up. Because one, if Islam leaves the division, or two, I'm sorry, but all things considered, if you're Volk and you take out like two guys at 55, now you're not cutting as much weight. I still like the fight with Islam. Full camp. You know, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. But more than likely, I just feel like Volk deserves a shot to go for that second gold with full camp. And I just think he doesn't have anything more to prove at featherweight past Ilya. I just think that Ilya is his Canelo to Volk's Mayweather.
I agree. That's a very spot-on analysis. I think that he could even move up now, and I wouldn't be mad about it. I don't even think that...
My co-host argues with me that every week, every time we talk about Volk and Ilya, but... Yes, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense, because it's just... I mean, yeah, those two guys, Holloway and Volkanovski, absolutely cleared out that division, so it makes sense for both those guys to move up. And, you know, who knows? Maybe one day they'll rematch at lightweight for a title. Who knows? You never know what could happen, which that would actually be really cool if they did that. I would love it. But it's interesting. It's very interesting what's going on in the division.
I realized I got off topic, but my point of that was if Ilya beats Volk, Max Holloway, just stick around another 6 months. You might still get your featherweight title back. You never know. But I also get Holloway saying, you know, I also don't have anything left at featherweight, you know? Like, his run also, I mean, the names and everything. It's hard to say that Max needs anything else at 45 either, so I get it.
Yeah, and Max's resume has aged very well as well. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy, actually, when you think about it.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look at the guys he's lost to, and it's like, man, he's a monster. Like Connor, and he's been a monster for a long time. Yeah. It's crazy. Well, what event are you most excited for? 300? Is that the one you're most excited for this year?
300 is up there. I always love anytime I get to be part of a promotion and do interviews. I haven't gotten to do it in a minute. The game's really changed post-COVID everywhere, but also here in LA for shows. So I want to get back to that. I think that's where I do a lot of my best work. Obviously, you know, very different from just media or red carpet and all that. It's raw, it's real. So any chance to do that. In terms of big events, 300, obviously. I do my best work in the summer. I do my best work in the winter. A lot of content that always comes out of that. And yeah, any chance to travel. Obviously, look, at this point, I've done Vegas enough times. It's routine. So anytime I get to go somewhere and really see it, experience it, feel that, get a good vibe, different vibe in, it's always refreshing. It always keeps you motivated, for myself anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I predict I will be going places. I don't know exactly where or when yet, but yeah, I think I'll be getting out a lot in 24.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see it. I like I said, I love your interviews, and I've seen some of yours. Actually, I think a couple of the ones you did at the presser with Sean have gone bananas, have gone viral.
Yes.
So
the amount of people, what was it? One friend sent me a clip of it. There was 15 million views, something along those lines. I didn't get tagged in nothing, which is always a little like, it's cool, but then I'm a little salty, and I'm like, I could have gone viral. I could have gone.
Next time I'm gonna tag you anytime I see one of your clips.
Thank you. But yeah, like my friends who don't watch any of this, like my barber, her husband saw it and sent it to her to send it to me. It's like the amount of people who have sent me that clip, which is like, well, it's good to know they're watching,
Yeah,
it's always
funny.
awesome in that way. And I get it. I saw that leading up to the Adesanya fight, the way it just kind of kept going around, it was like just the gift that keeps on giving, which is cool.
Yeah, well, it's because you ask great questions. Yeah, you ask great questions. So
I try.
that's how you get viral clips, is you ask good questions that get good answers, and that's what happens.
Thank you.
So you got to give yourself a little credit. Although Sean, I think anytime he touches a microphone, that's bound to go viral. But
in all honesty, my experience with Sean Strickland, you kind of he knows very well when you're teeing it up. I think he actually enjoys it.
Yeah.
We had a fight. He was just in the corner for Chris Curtis. Chris won. He's backstage with us. I'm sitting at my spot. Sean is like 2 spaces over with no one between us, kicking it, listening to Chris. And Sean was fighting, what was that one? Cannoneer the following week on the fight night. And so Chris is talking. We've gotten through the essentials. And I'm like, well, this is going to be easy. Hey, Chris Curtis, how do you feel about Sean Strickland coming up next week? Blah, blah, blah. I don't even look at Sean. I just hold the mic out and Sean just starts talking. And it's like, he knew fully well what I was doing. He knew I saw him right there. He knew. He knows. I think people think he rolls out of bed and this comes to him. Oh my gosh, he's ready. Y'all, don't be naive. He knows what he's doing when he's out there. Let's be honest.
That's funny.
Yeah, and he popped off, and that got some good traction, I believe. So yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love Sean. He's something else. He's very entertaining on the mic. One of my favorites on the mic, honestly. And I love how he does it so effortlessly. Like, it's very different from like a Chael Sonnen style where it's kind of scripted, and which I love that too. And it's funny. There's a fighter from our gym. He's kind of taking some notes from Chael. I love it. But I love that Sean, it's kind of just like, it just comes out of him. And he's such a passionate person too, that it's just like, here's the thing, you guys, and it just all comes out. But he does it in such a natural way. I love it.
I don't agree with a lot of the things he says.
Of course, yeah.
I'm very aware and you know what? The free speech is the thing, right? And it's like, you know what? This is that's who this dude is. And I'll say this, he doesn't shy away from it ever. I'll give him that. I think he should. I think some of the people in his life need to ask him, like, do you really feel that way about us? But, man, what he does is like, well, dude, here's the thing. There's nothing I could say about what he says that other people with better places of power can say worse about what he's doing out there. So it's like, look, that's not on me to judge you. That's on the people who, make money and do all that from your business. So go for it.
Right.
That's not my business, right? I already don't agree
and
with
I think
you.
he's
People know.
evolved a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's continuing to evolve, and I think Eric Nixick has a lot to do with that. I think he's played a big role in Sean's evolution, not only as a fighter but also just as a person. Like after the whole Dricus crowd fight, whatever you want to call it, their little scrap. I think that Eric reached out to him and was like, "Hey, kind of put him in his place a little bit on that situation." So I think Eric's doing a great job with him just in general, with helping him kind of evolve. And I mean, that's, he's got his hands full with Sean, to be honest. I mean, could you imagine being a coach and then this guy shows up to your gym and you're like, okay, this is my new project. So it's like he's done a great job, honestly.
Well, everybody talks about, like, if there's one thing Sean doesn't mess around about, it's training. I would hate to be Sean's manager. I feel like, it's like, you're telling me this guy did what with the Roman candles 2 weeks out? It's like, come on. He said what in front of how many? His t-shirts he's designing are saying what? It's like, I'm sure that person is like, I don't know that they. I don't know personally. I don't know if it's his girl who, and all that. But I'd assume if I were a traditional manager, I wouldn't be begging for the job. I feel like it comes with a whole lot of headaches.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But he made it all the way to the title, so it's like, man, it all paid off. All that, right. All that hard work paid off. But that's funny. I have an appreciation for Sean for sure, but I definitely, like you said, don't agree with a lot of the things he said. And it's funny because, it's possible to support a fighter and to love a fighter without agreeing with. Because if I based my support of fighters and people off of those kind of things, then there's very few fighters that I would support because, we all have different views. We all have different upbringings too. I mean, Sean had a very rough childhood, so I was kind of trying to give him credit for that. Because I know that it takes a long time to heal from that kind of trauma too. So I think eventually, when he's probably in his 40s, we're going to see a much different version of Sean. He's still going to be there. He's still going to be Sean. I think but he's going to be a more evolved version of Sean. And he's going to be like, here's the thing, you guys. But he's going to say, maybe he'll still have a little bit, he'll still say things that you're like, what? But I think it will be much more acceptable, I guess you could say.
I think he's going to have his touched by Jesus moment. I'll say it like that. We're going to be like, wait, what happened to the other guy? And it's like, oh my goodness, freaking soccer dad.
He'll have
Sean
a moment
Strickland.
for sure. Yeah, that's funny. Well, what are some of your favorite or most memorable events or interviews that you've done that have really kind of impacted you? I wanted to ask you that.
Pick one to start. I have several. You want me to talk events or interviews? I'm not gonna lie. That was the question I was most nervous about because I'm like, what if she asked me about interviews? And I'm like, oh my god, I forgot. I did so many.
I know it's probably hard for you to remember all of them.
I mean, sometimes
we'll start with events.
You know what? Oh my gosh, I'm the worst at numbers. I know it in the moment when I'm talking about it, and then I forget. Yeah. I believe it was 239, but it was my first UFC event, and as media. And it just, I can't really put into words the excitement, the feeling of accomplishment that I was credentialed. And it was everything. It was International Fight Week. We had the UFC Hall of Fame red carpet. The day before, the MMA Awards red carpet. Media Day, God bless you, which was the original, the way they used to do it. Ultimate Media Day, where you actually get all this one-on-one time with the whole card. And I just remember, one, it was the Masvidal Ben Askren event, John Jones, Thiago Santos, which was a good fight, Amanda and Holly Holm. So it's like, I was watching these superstars. I was watching an event I probably was going to be hyped for as a fan. Yeah. And I just remember everything popped off, made a lot of friends, some fighters, and those things are very special because it's like that's when it started. But the moment I actually remember the most from it was the morning of media day. I was so excited. I didn't have to check in anywhere till like I think it was 10. And I remember I woke up at like 5:30 cuz I just couldn't sleep anymore. I was so excited cuz this was everything I dreamed of. I had worked hard. I'd done so many events because I knew I was like, well, if you get to that point, you're going to be like those people you watched on YouTube and when that got you into this. And Thursdays was the day I always want to be a part of. You get to talk one-on-one with all of the UFC stars. And I was finally going to do it, and I woke up early, and yeah, I'll just remember that. It's just hard to top it. And it's your first event, and it's like,
Yeah.
how can you? Fight Island was amazing. I did I don't remember the number, Habib versus Gaethje, though.
Oh, wow.
That entire experience, the whole Habib of it all was a different vibe. We're seeing the clips and we see him like with the motorcade coming down through the desert. It's like, what's going on? Getting there, like I had to do like probably overall like 4 straight days of straight quarantine, 2 in Vegas, 2 in Abu Dhabi, fly 17 hours. You're in a bubble, so it's like you're in like this cul-de-sac of hotels and you go and it's like, if you've ever played like, a zombie apocalypse video game where like the cops have the barricade and they're making sure no one goes in or out, it's legit like that. And
Wow.
so it's like you can walk and everyone's nice, but then they're like, that you stay over here. Not aggressively, but they're doing their job. But it's like you're in this weird environment. It's just you. So it's just everyone's either staff, media, or fighters, like with the teams. And you're just in this like 2-block like thing with a beach and hotels. And so I'm out for a walk at night and freaking Tai Tuivasa is like running by me. It's like, it was just the weirdest experience. And then, like you're out there for Habib's last fight and the whole thing just, he wins and you're expecting it's Habib and the roaring, but it's so chill because there's so few people. So yeah, I always remember that. More or less, I remember stuff for like, little moments. Brian Ortega's walkout for Volkanovski with the purge and the mask. That was awesome. Fedor walking out in L.A. and it's like very much Rocky IV, Old Republic music, and he's walking out and it's like, dude, it's like Rocky. Little things like that are so memorable. Tito and Chuck 3, Golden Boy MMA, the only one. And it's, you're seeing like Tito's there in the flame shorts, Chuck's in the ice shorts, and it's like, these guys haven't fought since I was just a fan in like '08, freaking maybe '06. Right. And it's like, dude, it's like Back to the Future, like you're watching it, like you went in time. It felt like that watching them, and stuff like that. Interviews, the ones like for example Israel Adesanya, I'm always fond of that one because it's like he's now such a big superstar and I thought we had a great convo. Francis Ngannou is great. Just more or less because I remember like those guys were my first like at the event that I told you, Hall of Fame and all that, and I'm like, dude, those things, I just can't believe I did them. My first event, my first interview ever, my favorite fighter. Here, hold on. That's Ronda Rousey up there, and then I have Anderson Silva up here. I have like 3 Funkos up
Nice.
here. I have like most of the UFC Funkos, but like Anderson Silva, favorite fighter ever. And like the first ever one-on-one with a handheld interview that I ever got to do was Anderson Silva. And it was at an event I didn't expect him to do at all. And it's like, how do you top like your all-time favorite for your first interview? Like,
Yeah,
it just
that's
sets
huge.
it sets a tone, I'll tell you that. But I love those more or less because I know they were big names and just like how I handled them. Some of the other ones, a lot of people like my heads up stuff. I do too, especially when the fighters get into it. And Blanchfield went off, John Anik went off, Lorosenko. And then honestly, when people ask what are your favorite interviews, I think of the big names, but then if I'm being honest, like I've hung out with like Andrea Lee. We've only ever done like one interview, but we've done so many by Zoom and we're just good friends. And it's like, how can you not be excited to talk about your friends in this business? Jesse Strader, he had 2 UFC fights, but he lives like 2 minutes down from me in the car. And like I've hung out
Nice.
with him, his mom, his dad, his girlfriend, and it's like, how can I not, like some of these people have become my great friends. I know it's very easy to say, oh, like if you interview Conor McGregor, that's your favorite. And it's like, yeah, but then sometimes it's like these people who've hung out with me at the house and things like that. Those are, and to know that it's like I get to be a part of that with them and the people who I like and are important to me. Those are really awesome. And yeah, like obviously the big names, but I'd be lying if I said, if you ask me, like all the times I've gone to talk to Andrea just because we're close, it's like, it's honestly great. And to know I just have that, and they believe in me and the job I do, and people who maybe don't do that many interviews, it's like I just don't take that for granted, because it's what I always wanted, is to be a part of this space and provide the content for the people who are like me, who are maybe just watching stuff because they love UFC and they want to stop thinking about work and life, right? And I get to be that, and I get to have that. And so it's awesome that I get to make the content, but probably the most special thing you don't expect is that how these relationships become part of your life, and they're not just people I work with, but to say they're my friends, and to know they trust in me with what I'm doing, the way I support them and I appreciate them. That's just like, those make those interviews more special. And yeah, when I take a step back and I look at some of the clips or stuff, and Adesanya and Kayla Harrison and I had a great one. I know I have it pinned on my Instagram. I'm like, man, I'm just very blessed that I get to do the job that when I was watching on YouTube, I just thought, man, that'd be so cool to do. And I do it, and I've done it a bunch. God
Yeah.
bless. Thank you.
It's so cool. It's so cool. Yeah, I love it. I love your interviews. I've told you that like 7 times now, but
you can
but
tell me 10. I like a nice even number, please. Thank you.
But it's true. I mean, cuz I've done it, so I know how hard it is. And I've only done it with, on an amateur level basically, but I know how hard it is, especially like, the post-fight interviews. You got to think on the spot, and you got to think of the questions really fast, and you got to watch the fight and pay attention, and then you got to go. So it's like there's so much more to it than just asking questions. And also you don't want to like stumble over your words, but you don't want it to sound too robotic. So like it's an art form, just like editing is. And it's hard. I mean, interviewing is probably, to me, it didn't feel hard when I was doing it, but it felt hard getting ready to do it. And I think it was just like the nerves, the adrenaline of it. Whereas like doing podcasts, I don't really get nervous doing these. I don't, it doesn't, like I just turn my camera on and I start recording, but doing the interviews, I spend, the day before, I'm researching, I'm trying to figure out like the fighters and, where do they train? Where are they from? I try to find as much information as I can on them, which will probably be easier in the UFC because I already know a lot about the fighters. But there's still, I mean, if you're covering a fight night event, there might be some, people making their debut. And yeah, there's so much more to it, I think, than people think. But I think you do a great job. And I was going to ask you that too. Do you get nervous for doing interviews, or did you used to, and then has that gotten better? I feel like for me, like trying to chase people down, ask people questions, the idea of that gives me so much anxiety that like I don't know, I don't think I would like it.
So I've had certain context is everything. Where I'm at, who I'm with depends a lot. For example, at UFC, it's like, yeah, there's no cowboy run and gun get your interviews. We dictate the time, which is fine. That's why they're the top promotion. They're a machine. Some other smaller events, I've had PR say like, we don't have control of them either. You want it, go fight for it. And it's like, say no more. And it's like, you almost like you grab him before he realizes what you're doing. You grab the interview. Hey man, 1 minute. Oh yeah, sure. It feels like you got to do that, which feels so invasive, but it's like, nah, if you don't get your content. You don't get your return on the travel, the time, I have a job. There are times when it's like, hey, can you pick up the shift? No, I have this little event and I've committed to it. This is what I'm trying to do. so you do have to fight for things sometimes, and so context is everything. In terms of the nerves, like out there, preparation has always helped a lot, even if it's a big name. If I feel like you know what you're asking, you know what they're like, you know what they've been asked, you feel it, and it's like, hey, just you have as close to as many things to control, like baseball, they throw the ball hitting a home run. Now, mind you, if it's like someone randomly and it's like, oh, well, here's the thing. You can't get nervous. You kind of just got to think, look, do your best. If it doesn't go well, there's nothing stopping you from not putting it out there. If it's not live, just... I've had a few where I'm like, dang it, what just happened? And it's like, I thought we had 10 interviews. No, just 9. What? I don't know. You don't always have to be, like, here's the thing. Sometimes stuff happens. It happens to everybody. Go watch Ariel Helwani. Stuff happens to him. Brad Okamoto. Stuff happens to him. Do I get nervous? Like, okay, I know when I'm talking, I know when it's like, dude, this person doesn't do a lot of interviews. This person's a big name. You obviously, I don't know if nerves, but certainly I'm excited. I'm like, oh, I hope this goes well. Like, let's, like, I do get more attentive, but do I get, oh my God, please, this and that? I don't say as much. I'm just kind of like, because now I've just done it enough times that I do think that repetition, and then 2, it's just like, you know what? Do your best. Give him that energy, because that you can control. Even if you have no idea who this dude is. If I'm the millionth person to ask him, hey man, how did that fight go compared to your expectations? You just say it with your chest. And you give him that energy, because even if he's like, oh, this again, that energy can make the difference. So I can do that comfortably, no matter who it is, just instinctively. And if it doesn't go well, it's like, you know what, as long as you give it your best, the internet hates you even when you're awesome. So it's like, what's there to be nervous about? You're respectful, you're nice, just do it. So that's a lot of words to say. I get excited, but I don't get scared. And that's a good way to put it. Like Dana White, you never want to be the guy who maybe, sometimes you're listening to a lot of questions and you stumble it. You'd hope he understands you, and, you don't want to be that person who ends up on, like, the other side of the Sean Strickland thing, for example. But it's like, look, it happens, and you just got to try your best. And, if you do that, you could be okay with a lot of this stuff, even if it doesn't go the way you imagined it.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I would be very nervous leading up to it until I, like, got there. Then the nerves would probably go away. Because that's how it was for me when I did the Shamrock interviews. Like, I was very nervous up until I got there and set up my camera. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm good.
And some things only come with like, reps and ready. Time. Let's be real. Yeah. Reps and time, you're going to be like, you know what? Say it like this. Stand like this. And it's like, maybe your outfit, like, no, these outfits make me look nice. And that gives me confidence. All those little things are very relevant. Your ease and all that, like, if something goes wrong and you know how to fix it, that's huge. Knowing, oh, wait, I like my camera like this when they're taller, when they're shorter. All of those things are very relevant, and some of those things only come with time. And like you said, practice. What I want to praise you for, and I'd like you to know, one of the things, and one of the reasons why they're my favorites, a lot of those local shows, you don't really, and we've had this talk, I think, on the first show we ever did, is that how many people go on to do different stuff. Like, I've talked to amateur fighters, and they've gone on to Ultimate Fighter, and they got signed to UFC, and it's like, dude, I remember when you were like 3 fights into your amateur career, and it's like, how did this happen? And some of the people who just like, dude, we were a local show, there was like maybe 100, it was not even 100 people, we were at the gym, 50 people, and it was like a gym fight, not even like, I don't even know that all the commissioners necessary were there, and they go on to UFC, and they're doing big things in a PFL, or, hey man, like Ryzen, and we're doing this in one championship. And it's like, what? Those things, you don't realize it when you're doing those, how much they remember you. Because let's be real, you get to a certain level, oh yeah, now you guys want to talk to me. But then when they see you, it's like, oh no, I know you. You've been on the scene. You've been moving up. You know, you're up in here sitting next to Brett Okamoto at the media day and all this. And I remember when Bree was there in Missouri talking to us at Shamrock. You remember that? She was with her little camera, dude. And now look over here. She freaking one of the pros next to the big dogs. You know, that's how it works.
Yeah.
All of those things are very relevant. That's one thing I will say is that the local scene, I think, has evolved so much that it's like, at least in my area, it just ain't like it used to be. And I miss that because I miss those relationships I used to make. Now it's like, dude, it's not as easy as it used to be. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's, it's huge. And like even at my gym, like there's fighters at my gym, I could easily see them going to 1FC, to the UFC. They're early in their amateur career, but I can see the talent is there. I can see the drive, the ambition, the dedication. Shout out to ESMMA and Fitness, by the way. That's my gym. There's tons of killers at that gym. A lot of up and coming Amis and even some pros. Evan Elder, he comes over there when he's in town, and
your
Max
guy
Shoryev,
Augie, who's gone on to Vegas.
Yeah, he used to train. Well, we used to train at St. Charles MMA. That was my gym before. But yeah, and that's another great example. Like I interviewed him at Shamrock. I very well could be interviewing him at the UFC one day. And that would be so cool if we do a little side by side of like, hey, look at this one and then look at this one. Like that would be dope.
How it started, how it's going.
Yeah, so it's cool. I mean, you really never know. And even a lot of the fighters that I interviewed that are, just starting out in their career. I mean, there's some real talent in the local scene, and it's sometimes hard to tell who's gonna make it and who's not, because some people just, their priorities change. They decide, they don't want to be a fighter anymore or whatever. Because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to balance fighting with working your full-time job and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily even that the talent isn't there. A lot of times it's just that, other things get in the way. But there are a ton of great fighters, and our kickboxing scene is really growing in St. Louis now as well. I mean, Kendall Whited, one of the kickboxers at our gym, well, he does MMA too, but he just won a title in Indiana over the weekend. And so we've got not only a great MMA scene here, but we've got a great kickboxing scene, and I'm excited to see the growth of it and see how all of these relationships kind of develop over the years. And who knows, I think it's really cool to kind of, we're all kind of starting from the same place, and then we kind of grow together. So I love it. And I think that's why I love being so involved with the local scene. And of course I can't make it to every event, I mean, I can barely make it to half the events I get invited to, but if I could, I would. But I do like at least to, share, whether it's sharing, their fight on social media or, whatever I can do to help support them. Or I've even had people hit me up asking me for their opinions on their, break down their upcoming fights. So it's like,
because you're great at it.
It's really cool.
As they should. Hey, well they should. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's awesome. I love it. And I think that, it's really cool too, because there's not really anybody in St. Louis that I know of that's really making a name for themselves in MMA media and like, doing, I guess doing things on a high level with like UFC fighters. So if I was able to do that and then help kind of bring some of that back home with me and kind of give St. Louis more exposure, I think that'd be really cool. So, yeah, it's awesome. And I think that doing the interviews on the local shows was a really good experience for me. First of all, to get experience with doing it, and also though to kind of get to know a lot of the fighters and start developing those relationships, because at the end of the day, that's who I really do it for. That's who I really care about. Obviously, I guess I care about the promoters a little bit, but most, for the most part, I care about the fighters. They're the ones that are getting out there and, really honestly, they're taking the most risk. They're putting so much effort into it, putting so much hard work, dedication. They're eating right. They're cutting the weight. They're doing all of that. So I have a lot of respect for them. And so I want to do everything that I can to help give them, a platform, give them some exposure, so that way they can focus on, what they're good at, fighting.
And one thing I want to really, once again, when you talk about that and being on the amateurs and supporting that, maybe, and this is me once again, I've been doing this too long apparently, but especially in today's, we talked about it, the new media, there's a lot of what I would call the cell phone media, which, look, I get it, clicks and all that, clicks and followers is so king in today's landscape for everything, not just MMA. Your business gets 2 million followers, watch how many people suddenly care to eat your pizza or something like that, But how many of them, and I know because we see media who'll do this and it's like, hey, well, what do you got going on? Well, I have this and that, and it's like, you got a few thousand followers and you DM regularly with a few fighters and suddenly you think like you're ready for UFC 299 or something, and it's like, it doesn't work that way, guys. But here's something I want to tell you, and you asked my guy Eddie Law, we've talked about it on the show, will tell you, the amount of people who, when you tell them, we need to see you do other stuff, we need to see this and that, like you're doing on the regional scene, and they're just like, they act like you insulted them. They act like you disrespected them for telling them that it's like, look, just because you have this and that and you're good with clips, I'm sorry, that doesn't give us a good indicator how you are at events yet. And they just don't want to correspond or work with us anymore, which, all right, go live your life, man. Blessings, right? But it's like, no, the amount of people who don't want to do that, who feel like the only place they could do media is a UFC, PFL, or Bellator, and they're just like, don't want to take the time and just do everything to do that effort for like a Shamrock, like a other stuff. It is mind-boggling because everyone wants to do it, everyone wants to be good at it, but they don't want to travel outside their front door. They feel like it's either big show or bust. So the fact that you go out there, let me tell you something. The amount of people who are like, I should do that, but don't, a lot bigger than you'd imagine. So the fact that you do that, I think it's very praised. I encourage a lot of local media. If you're trying to get better at it, you want this, you want something to show, you want a place where you can mess up so much and they're okay with it and they'll still invite you back because they realize you're learning and they're just happy that you're covering. Oh my God, let me tell you something. That doesn't fly other places. If we send you to the UFC and mess it up, let's be real. Either you give us the trash you created or you're probably fired for giving us nothing. That's how it works. But, you're at the local show, you're working the kinks out? Not only this, I would actually say, show me what went wrong. I'll even give you some advice to help you because I see that you're trying that hard to make it happen. So I just want to shout that out. The amount of people who could be doing that but don't, it is mind-boggling to me. Because I know that all of us, all of these messages we get, we want to do it, etc., etc. You know what I mean? So. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think, and I hope I can cover, some other local shows this year too, just to kind of, get different perspectives and different. See how different promotions are, and because everybody does things differently, and I think doing different shows would benefit me just from having a different environment and being put in different situations. I think would be good to kind of get me out of my comfort zone a little bit before I do go to a big show, because I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I want to be very prepared when I do that. So I want to not only in doing the interviews, which I think that part I feel like I'm good at, but it's still like one of those things I get nervous about, but also in evolving my knowledge of the sport and, the current rankings and how, the business side and all that kind of stuff, and evolving my knowledge and just truly being a student of the game. Kind of like Garrett Armfield said in your interview, which I gotta show some love to Garrett Armfield. He's from St. Louis and just got a big win over Brad Katona. So congratulations to him. And that was awesome. I saw you guys posted that clip, so I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, that's our guy Jay.
Giving St. Louis some love.
He had a great response for it. I thought it was great.
That was awesome. Yeah. Well, I could talk to you all day. I think every time we talk, it goes almost 2 hours. And I'm sure we'll do this one again.
Two people have a lot to say to each other, Bree. No,
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
exactly.
One thing I appreciate about it, some people, it's like, they don't feel as comfortable talking about a lot. You're like, no, we could talk a lot. Let's go. And it's like, perfect. It's just like, it does help. It gets tiring when you got to carry it. And so the fact that you're like, no, I'm ready to run too. I'm like, let's do it. So yeah, look, thank you very much. This has been a very brilliant, resilient experience for me. So thank you. But no, like, I just enjoy talking, and I like collaborating with you. I've said as much on my show, and yeah, just all this stuff we talked about. I'd just say, you're probably further along in the journey than you may even realize, because you just haven't experienced it yet. But you are more than on your way. I think that you are on that golden road from the Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? So much props to you.
Thank you, and much respect to you as well, of course, for kind of helping me, give me some guidance too. And I'm really glad that we connected. I'm really glad that we've been able to collab, and I'm looking forward to, hopefully one day we get to meet up. Maybe UFC 300, who knows?
Hey,
that would be awesome. That would be an epic MMA meetup.
you just say the word. I got you.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure I will talk to you again very soon. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we got a couple of weeks without fights here coming up, so
I know. It's
kind of sad.
I gotta go find a life now or something.
Yeah. All right, Gabriel. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. We'll talk again soon. I'll see you later.